Today I'm going to show you guys how we made a healthy dessert where the microgreens are the main part of the dish instead of just a topper. If you are new to our channel, we do all kinds of videos on growing as we try to provide a lot of clarity and understanding around how to grow some amazing greens. If you'd like to tag along and become a believer, be sure to hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so that way you get notified anytime we release new videos. And if you're feeling extra generous, be sure to smash that thumbs up button because it will help us share this video to more people. So the very first thing that I need to do is I need to grow a tray of sunflower microgreens. That way I have some sunflowers to dip. So the first thing that I need to do is I need to get 3 of my Bootstrap Farmer 1020 trays, so that way I have my 3-tray method. Next thing I like to do is I take my slotted tray and I fill that up with my grow medium of choice. For this grow, I'm going to be using the Burpee Organics potting soil mix because this soil is really great at germinating and always provides us with really great growth. Plus the NPK of the soil is 0.12, 0.12, 0.12, and we just love this soil right now. Another cool thing about the soil is you can add your own nutrients if you want to. If you're gonna do that, I would suggest using some worm castings because we found that worm castings work great with this particular soil. So now I need to lightly tamp my soil. That way the seeds can evenly germinate on this and they're not all raised up all over the place. Now it is time to begin seeding my tray. For this grow, I'm gonna be using the black oil sunflower seeds from True Leaf Market. I was supposed to use 125 grams for this 1020 tray, and clearly I seeded this probably closer to the 200 range, which I wouldn't suggest. It's pretty dang dense, but we made it work for this grow. Once I had my tray seeded with my insane amount of sunflower seeds, it was time to water my tray. For this, I used a 2-gallon pump sprayer, and this just had regular tap water in it. If you want to, you can use filtered water or even distilled water if you prefer to. It's really up to you on this. Whenever I'm watering my tray, I'm making sure not to focus on one particular area. I'm just gliding my way through the tray. That way it gets an even watering. And remember, make sure not to overwater. If you overwater, you will run into problems with mold. Once I had my sunflowers watered, it was time to take my last 1020 no-hold tray and place that on top of my seeds. I then added a little bit of weight on that, so that way it gave a little bit of pressure, and it was also able to help us trap in that humidity to help our seeds crack open. If you're curious why we put weight on top, we'll be sure to link the video right up here for you, so that way you can see the effects of adding weight versus no weight. Next, I took my tray and I placed it on our shelf where we get good airflow, so that way we don't run into issues with mold, and that way we get a good grow out of my microgreens. From this point forward, I watered my crops twice a day, once in the morning and once in the evening, and each time I made sure not to oversaturate my tray. Oh, my throat got so dry. Yeah, I'm good. By day 3, I could tell that my sunflowers were germinating super well, and you can tell this because that little root that's coming out of them, that is called the radicle. That is our first root. And right now, what I want to happen is for that to drive down into the soil and give these guys that structure they need to continue to grow up. These guys were not ready today, so I put them back underneath my weight so that way they can continue to germinate. Today is day 7, and my sunflowers are now becoming weight lifters because they are lifting up that weight as they begin standing up. And since I can see that my sunflowers are beginning to root very well, it is time to introduce them into the light. As for the seeds that haven't germinated yet, they're gonna have plenty of time to push themselves out of that seed hole and begin to germinate with the rest of my crop. To grow my tray of sunflowers, I'm gonna be using 2 of the 20-watt Barina lights, so that way my sunflowers can grow all the way up till harvest day. He's gonna have so many good bloopers, babe. Something I really love about these lights is they are relatively cheap to buy and run, costing only 16 cents a day to run at our 17 hours on and 17 hours on, 7 hours off. 17 hours on and 7 hours off lighting schedule. If you're curious about more lighting videos for microgreens, be sure to check out our videos on this. We have a ton of them that can help you guys decide on some lights to use in your grow space. And since we have introduced our microgreens into the light, I am going to begin bottom watering these. And I'm still going to be doing the bottom watering twice a day like I would with misting. And when it comes to sunflowers, don't be confused if you have to give them a little bit more than 2 cups. Sometimes they may even need 4 cups of water since they do like to drink a lot of that water. But remember, sunflowers can also be prone to overwatering, so be sure not to give them too much water. But a cool thing to know about sunflowers is if you dehydrate them a little bit, you can get a beautiful red stem on them. And if you're curious about how to do that, we will link a video up here so that way you can check it out because it is gorgeous. Today is day 10 and my sunflowers are looking amazing. The cotyledons have developed beautifully and they're beginning to get super plump from being filled up with all that chlorophyll. And taking a look at my tray, I got a very consistent growth out of this and we're getting a nice roundness to my canopy. And I can tell that it is harvest day because I am seeing signs of that true leaf coming in between my cotyledons. I don't want this to go any longer because whenever that true leaf comes out on a sunflower, it begins to get bitter. And something else that I'm noticing is next time I need to be very careful about how much seed I put on a single tray because this was way too much. I noticed there was areas where my tray wasn't quite germinating because it was so constricted from being jam-packed into this tiny little area that it's just everything didn't get a chance to grow. And because of that restriction of air, I did run into a problem with mold on part of the tray, which that sucks because it means that there's a part of the tray that I can't use. And I don't like having a lot of waste. And that was totally my fault on that. So now I'm gonna go ahead and get this tray harvested and put them into a container. And then I'm gonna meet you in our kitchen so that way I can dip these beautiful microgreens.
Ooh, I can't wait to show you guys what we're about to do with these.
A little later.
In case you're curious, I got a heaping 913 gram harvest from a single tray. Not all of it was pretty though. There were some areas over here that I just didn't keep. I just harvested it so that way I can figure out what the weight is on this tray. Definitely never doing this heavy of a seeding again on a 1020 because that was way too much. I will say that was a very healthy root structure. Look at that. It's crazy.
So the first thing I need to do is just kind of prep them. And what I mean by that is we're gonna go through our bag and any of these sunflowers that have seed holes like this still attached, I'm just going to take it off if it comes off, or I'm just gonna completely set that aside on a different plate. And I'm gonna put all my clean ones onto this plate for us to chocolate dip. This part can be a little bit tedious, but trust me, you wanna do it so that way you don't get that seed hole in the chocolate. That wouldn't be pleasant to bite down on. So I think this is a nice amount for me to start with. Everything is looking nice and clean. And I'm gonna now take this over to my sink, give them a nice rinse, and let them kind of dry off a little bit. Now it's time to start melting our chocolate for our sunflowers. For this, I'm using a semi-sweet chocolate, and you want something that's in the 60 to 70% range. That way it's not super sweet. Personally, I don't really like things that are very sweet. And I've always heard that it's best to use stuff for chocolate dipping that's in that range. So for this, I got these little chocolate bars here, and we are going to use 2 of them. So typically whenever you are melting chocolate, you want to use a double boiler. And that's just one of those pots where you have the pot on the bottom and the other one sits on top like this. And you'll pour water into the bottom one, and the steam from that water boiling will lightly start to melt the chocolate above without burning it. But for today, I don't have one of those, so I'm just gonna do this kind of a way that I taught myself, where I'm just using 2 pots that I have, and I'm putting my smaller pot on the bottom, and now I'm gonna take some water, pour that into my pot, don't need a whole lot, and then I'm gonna take a slightly bigger pot and just kind of set it on top like this, just enough so that way steam can kind of go out and that way the pot doesn't start doing the whole shaking thing that they do sometimes. And we're just gonna hold it here. So the first thing that I need to do is take my 2 chocolate bars and I'm going to place it into my top pot. I would suggest kind of breaking it apart a little bit. That way you don't have the huge chunks. The huge chunks will take a lot longer. Now we're gonna take our second bar and do the same thing. Now that we have our water in the bottom and then our chocolate in this top one here, look at all that yummy chocolate. I'm going to turn on my stove top, which I'm only gonna put mine on medium just to get the water boiling a little bit. And then I'm going to drop that down into the low range. And for this, you kind of want to stay near if you're doing it this way where it's a little bit ghetto rigged. That way you make sure this pot doesn't get shot off by any steam and your chocolate gets everywhere. Now that my water is at a good boil and we got a lot of that steam coming off, I'm going to take this and just drop it down to low. and put my chocolate back on top. I removed it for a second so that way I could see the water. And that steam is gonna start to heat up this pot here, which is gonna start to slowly melt the chocolate. I feel like I learned this little trick here with 2 pots from my mom, because she likes to bake things a lot. She's an incredible baker. And I remember seeing her do it this way, and that's how I learned to do it whenever I was making brownies from scratch. So it looks like all of our chocolate has melted. I'm gonna let this do this a little bit longer so that way it stays kind of runny. And that way it also gives me enough time to move my camera equipment over for the next step. So now I'm gonna take this over and I'm gonna pour this into my bowl over at the next area. See you guys over there. I'm gonna pour it into a bowl. That way I can dip all my sunflowers in it easily. I tried to pick something that had a wide mouth on it and it wasn't too wide though. So over here I have my little station set up. I now have my chocolate in my bowl for dipping, and I put down some parchment paper so that way any of the chocolate that falls, it doesn't get all over my counter and it's easy to clean up. And we have our sunflower microgreens, which are the star of the show over here. I also have something over here for them to go on once they've been dipped. And this is just an anti-stick mesh mat, so that way the chocolate can still dip through, but it's easy to clean. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get dipping. If you want to, you can use a little chocolate dipper like this, where you put your items into it, and then you can just put it in there like that. But I think I'm gonna start by just hand dipping these, because I think that's gonna get a prettier effect. So let's just grab our first contestant, which try and get to focus. There we go. And we're just going to dip it into the chocolate. You can dip it however you want. Ooh, that's pretty. So I'm just gonna kind of shake it off for just a second. Get a little bit more of that drippage off, and then lightly lay it down on my mat. And now I'm just gonna continue to do this for the rest of them. So enjoy the little time lapse. Now that I have all my sunflowers chocolate dipped, I am going to let these dry just for a few minutes. That way it hardens up some. You can put them in the fridge if you want to, so that way it keeps them fresh, but I'm just gonna let them sit like this because it shouldn't take long at all, and I will see you guys here in a moment. I ended up putting this whole thing in the freezer for about 2-3 minutes. That way it allowed these to dry a lot quicker. Since you are working with a technically live plant that you harvested, you want to do this as quick as possible so that way they don't start to go bad. And putting it in the freezer made this a really, really quick drying method. So what I'm going to do now is try to pull my mat away from my rack underneath carefully. There we go. And quickly look at those. Ooh, those look so good. And now I'm just going to get these removed. Looks so good. Okay, so I'm gonna start removing all these and just place them onto my plate over here. I'm gonna try to do this as quick as possible so that way this chocolate doesn't melt all over my fingers.
5 minutes later.
Well, there you have it. We now have a plate full of chocolate dipped sunnies, and they look gorgeous. I'm loving this one right here because you can really see that sunflower leaf shape. I can't really pick it up the other way or it falls over. This would be a great addition to put on top of cupcakes. Even just eat by itself. It's really just a fun and creative way to use microgreens that turns it more into a dessert rather than just being greens. Make sure that whenever you're doing this though, that you're only making enough that you're gonna use right away. This is not gonna keep for that long, and whenever you're not eating them, be sure to refrigerate this so that way they don't go bad super quick, because it still is a microgreen underneath all of this chocolate. So now I'm gonna go ahead and enjoy my first chocolate dipped sunny. That is really good. That dark chocolate, the creaminess from that dark chocolate just complements the texture of the sunflower. Plus you get a hint of that nutty sunflower microgreen flavor. And this pairs so great together. Probably one of my new favorite ways to use microgreens in a dessert form. This is one of the few microgreens you can chocolate dip because it is a heartier microgreen. It can handle this. To recap, this video is about taking CJ's idea and trying to create a healthy microgreen dessert that is the star of the show instead of just being a topper on some other kind of dessert. We ended up being extremely successful in doing this. They tasted, what is that? And these were probably some of the best things that I have tasted in a while, and they even tasted better as we let them sit in the fridge for a longer period of time. They got so crunchy and just tasted so good that we ended up finishing that entire plate of microgreens that night, and we ended up giving ourselves a bit of a sugar headache. So keep it in mind that this is still a perishable product. You don't want to leave these sitting out for too long or even in your fridge for too long, because they will begin to wilt and it's not as enjoyable. Because no one likes a limp sunflower, no matter how much chocolate is covering it. Next time, I totally want to try dehydrating my sunflowers first, so that way we get that beautiful red stem, and then I can dip it into chocolate again and hopefully get an even more amazing flavor. This would also be an awesome topper to put on top of microgreens, so that way you get a secret little green boost on your ice cream. Well, you guys, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I can't wait to hear what you guys think of this recipe. I know that a lot of you guys really enjoyed our peanut butter jelly sandwiches with the sunflowers, and I promise that this is completely up there with that. If you'd like to share how you grow, or if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them in the comments section below, and we'll be sure to answer those as soon as we possibly can. We also have a Facebook and an Instagram. They're both at On The Grow Farms, where we share a lot of other fun content, so be sure to follow us over there. And we have a website that is www.onthegrow.net, and we're going to update our website very soon with some more fun blogs and stuff like that. All right, everyone, you guys have a fantastic day and keep on believing.